Thank you all so much for coming to this session about the Innovation Ninja. I really appreciate it. So to start off, I'm going to challenge you to grab two things, okay? So the first thing that you're going to grab is going to be something that begins with the first letter of your first name. So for example, my name is Amber, and I brought my breakfast. I brought an apple. So A for apple, A for Amber. The second thing I want you to grab is an item that begins with the first letter of your last name. So mine's a little bit tricky. I have a last name of Vanderburg, but I found a vinyl record. So I have A for Amber, A for Apple, V for Vanderburg, V for vinyl. So I'm going to give you just a second to grab those two items that begin with the first letter of your first name, first letter of your last name. Ready, go. Yep, 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Stop. All right. Let's see if you can, I know we're not on video share, but if you can put in the chat the two things that you got for your first name and your last name, the two things that you have. I didn't give you a lot of time. You have to be really creative. I know Michael has a Y in his last name. A mug only. Y is a hard last name. I wonder what a Y thing is that you could grab. Anyone else have something that they grabbed that began with the first letter of their first name or the first letter of their last name? 2, 1. Yeah, it can be kind of a difficult a difficult challenge, but here we say, I couldn't go get the second thing. What did you get for the first thing? You have a mouse? Oh my gosh, I hope it's not a live mouse. I got a drive. Okay, awesome. Awesome, so great. See, I got an apple because in my family, I am the apple of my grandfather's eye. So I'm the apple of his eye. And I got a vinyl record because I love music. And so those are two things about me. And see, this is a really simple way that you can begin your meetings within your teams or organizations. I'm finding in this time, some of us are experiencing a little bit of Zoom fatigue or screen fatigue. And one challenge that many teams are facing is bringing the personality and bringing the human side back to our team meetings. And so this is a fun way just to begin your meetings. Yourself kind of gets our innovative juices flowing, and it allows us to engage in conversation again right from the get-go. As I said, my name is Amber Vanderburg, and I am from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm the founder of the Pathways Group, and so we do leadership development and team building consulting all over the world. We work with teams to help them perform more efficiently, more effectively, and more enjoyably as well. So that's kind of what we do. And we begin our meetings with fun activities like this because we are, again, trying to solve that problem of making meetings more enjoyable. And when it comes to innovation, this really is the beginning of where we should start. See, whenever we are seeking to be innovative, we first must clearly identify what problem we are actually solving. See, if you want to be innovative for innovative's sake, and if you want an answer, then you'll probably find an answer. But if we're not asking the right questions and clearly identifying what that problem is, then the answer that we receive might not be the solution that we seek. It's so imperative that we are asking the right questions and clearly identifying what problems we are solving in our innovation initiatives. And generally, whenever I begin working with teams in those innovative methods and we are clearly defining that problem, I find that within teams, innovation challenges come down to three major challenges, three major categories. And see, in these different categories, it's going to dramatically affect the methods that we use in our innovation strategy. The first type of challenge that we face within a team is to fix an existing problem. So we already have an existing system or product or service, and there is a problem. There is something that we need to fix. And whenever we are faced with this type of challenge and this type of problem solving, the next step that we can take is more of a causal analysis. This is when we can ask questions to really come down to the root of what that problem is and what specifically we are fixing. See, the next type of challenge that many teams face and the type of problem solving that we face is to improve or to progress an existing system or product. And these are really the two major types of problem solving or innovation strategies that teams will face. Either we're fixing an existing problem, in which case it's so important to do more of a causal analysis, or we are evolving or we are progressing an existing system or product. And oftentimes in this scenario, we are doing a little bit of value engineering and asking questions on what specifically is going well within this certain product. What can we improve upon? It's for this reason that we have an iPhone 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? Every single time there is a progress. There is more of the evolving in that product or service. And we will face these types of problem solvings for a few different reasons. It could be to meet government regulations. It could be to stay up on competitive advantage. It could be to increase customer loyalty. There's a few different reasons why we would progress and evolve in our systems and products. But clearly, value engineering is going to be a little bit different than a causal analysis. And so it's important that we first identify what types of problems we're solving. The third type of problem solving is to create something totally new. And so in these scenarios, I think of companies like Disney and Edison, and they are creating something that is entirely new. And the systems that you and the approach that you'll make in these scenarios are going to be a little bit different. Generally, in that scenario, a good friend of mine, Jim Bellafor, he highly recommends TRIZ, which is TRIZ. And that is a very common way that leads you through the methods of creating new product altogether. And that was a lot of information, but see, so oftentimes whenever teams and organizations come into a war room or they come into a room to be extremely innovative, we want to almost romanticize and come up with very creative ideas. But again, if we want answers, we'll get answers. But if we're not asking the right questions, then those answers might not be the solutions that we're actually seeking. We must first, above all else, take the time to truly identify what problem we are actually solving. And that will affect the methods that we use to move forward in our innovation methods. And it will help us clearly define our success measures on the back end of our project. So again, recap, you're going to either be fixing an existing problem, product, or system. You're going to be improving or progressing upon an existing product, problem, or system, or you're going to be creating something entirely new. Now, whenever we come, after we have identified these, what type of problem we are solving and what types of methods that we are going to use to move forward in being successful in this innovation initiative, then oftentimes we will all come together, whether that be in a physical room or in this new landscape in more of a virtual room, and we will come in more of a collaborative sense and to really come up with different ways to solve these problems. But there are three major balances that we can seek within our team dynamic and within our team environment to really increase the innovation within our teams. And see, the first type of balance that we can seek within our team dynamic is within flow. Now, flow is a concept that is by a man named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. I think I said that right. And he's a psychologist that writes that it's important that we find a balance between the ability of our team and our current ability that we have and the challenge of what we can take on. For example, if I am wanting to bake, then I have to acknowledge that my current ability to make food is like making toast. And so taking on a 5-course meal might be a little bit overwhelming. It might be beyond my current ability. Whereas if I see, and in that scenario, I'm more likely to get frustrated and to get disheartened and to not complete the task. In the same regard, if I am a very well-known chef and I work for a massive restaurant and then I'm tasked with making toast, then in that same regard, I'm more likely to get bored and to get a little bit frustrated and disinterested. And in either scenario, you are less likely to enter into that flow state where you've met that balance between ability and challenge. And so as we're working together as a team, it's important to do a quick assessment as to what our current ability is, what are your recent accomplishments, and then looking at the challenge as well. And so being able to create an environment where you're more likely to enter into that flow state. The next sort of balance that you are looking for within your team dynamic to really increase that innovation within your team is to find a balance between the constraints and the limits within your team. Now, there's a myth that within a team, if there are no constraints and there are no limits, then we have a totally blank slate and we can be as creative as possible. But research actually shows that those limits and constraints actually can increase innovation. It gives us more of a framework to work around, and it can narrow that scope within our work. And so having some sort of limits and knowing what those constraints are within your team are really important and can actually be beneficial to the innovation within your organization. At the same time, we want to find a balance, because if we go on the other extreme and provide all sorts of constraints, then that can be a bit crippling as well. So we want to seek to have that balance of identifying what our limitations are, what the constraints are within the scope of that project, so that you can have a clearly defined framework to work within. And so again, finding that balance within those constraints and clearly identifying what that framework is can be extremely helpful as you are moving forward. And then the third area of balance that you can seek within your building your environment is within your feedback loops. Now, most of you probably know quite a bit about feedback loops, working within DevOps and working within your team and your organization. But whenever I'm talking about feedback loops, I'm talking about really in that ideation phase, as you are coming up with ideas to solve these challenges and to solve these problems. And there is a balance between allowing space for ideas to be fully said and to be formulated to some extent before they are shut down. So there is a balance between if I'm coming up with an idea and I've said the first few words and then it gets shut down, and we do that over and over again, then that can actually lessen the freedom that a team member can feel to share those ideas and to enter into their most innovative self. And so we want to allow a space where ideas can be fully said before we are shutting those ideas down so quickly. In the same regard, we also want to have a balance within that feedback loop. So we're not going with the first idea and running all the way with one idea before we come back and give that feedback to assess whether or not that is the best idea to move forward within your team. So it's important to have some sort of balance within those feedback loops, especially in the ideation phase, talking about in your brainstorming room, especially in identifying how you're going to give that feedback in a very timely manner so that people have the freedom to share those ideas, but then also you are getting timely feedback if you would like to move forward with one idea or maybe come back and assess a few other ideas. So looking at those feedback loops is so critical, especially in that ideation phase, as you are coming up with the most innovative way to solve these challenges and the problems that are presented to us. And so finding balance within these three things is really, really important. And as we are working within our teams, I generally work within our team dynamics. See, oftentimes whenever we are coming up with innovative ideas, whenever we are being creative, many times these ideas, they come from our own mind and they're very personal to us. And we invest a lot of ourselves into these innovation methods and into these innovation initiatives. And one thing that I work with teams is assessing the team dynamics and how we can work together as a team to really maximize the value of the collaboration within these innovation methods. Now, whenever I assess team dynamics, I do a couple things that are very specific and very catered to the ideation phase, to the implementation phase of your innovation methods in your team. So one of the first things that I do whenever I come into a team, depending on the team dynamic, is I will do an assessment. Now, this can look a little bit different depending on how long the team has been together, if this is a new project, if this is a similar project that they've done before, if this is an entirely new organization. So I look at those dynamics to assess which assessment is going to be the most productive for the team. But generally, whenever I'm coming into a newer team, I will ask all of the members to pull out an index card, and on the front side of the card, I'll have them write a couple of the strengths that they can bring to the team. And so it'll be, just 3 or 4 different attributes that they can bring to the team. And then on the opposite side, I will have all of the team members write something that they wish somebody else in the team can contribute. So what is a strength that you really wish somebody else on the team has? I'll give you an example. Whenever I come into a team, I am a big visionary person. I can see the forest, but not always the trees. I have a lot of energy and I can see the big picture. But on my opposite side of the card, I always really want someone that has more of a detailed mind. So someone that can really see those details and to follow through. And this will identify ways that we can complement each other and also areas in which we might have conflict. See, we might have tension in that she is frustrated that I don't see the details, and I can be frustrated that she doesn't see the larger picture, but we'll complement each other in this way. And so I will, it's always now difficult to know how to integrate that innovation within your work. And so what I'll do is I'll begin having that proactive conversation with the team member before the tension even begins. So we've already identified areas for complement and areas for possible conflict. And so I engage in proactive conversations. And proactive conversations is, again, about a 5-minute conversation, but is so powerful. It goes like this. At some point in this relationship, there's probably going to be tension. There's probably going to be heat. Not only that, we're talking very specifically in areas that we perceive that there might be future conflict. And so while the emotions are low now, let us proactively discuss how we're going to handle this. And that's it. That's the conversation. But it is so powerful because it does two things. First, it normalizes conflict. A lot of times, teams do not want to address conflict because they don't want to admit that a problem is there. They don't want to admit that there has been conflict. But through a proactive conversation, we are acknowledging that not only is conflict normal, it's actually expected within our team. So the first thing is that it does is it sets an expectation. The next thing is that it provides a script and a game plan. So not only do I expect that this is probably going to happen in the future, I already know the next steps on what I'm going to do whenever those tensions arise. Those proactive conversations are so critical within a team. And so I do that whenever I go into these ideation methods because I'm able to then identify those team dynamics and be very proactive in how we can best collaborate as we progress and move forward. There's a couple other activities. Again, I'll take only a couple minutes that you can use to assess team dynamics and that you can use to better cater your communication style or your leadership style whenever you are working within a team to not only come up with in the ideation phase, but also in the implementation phase of implementing these ideas. One really simple activity that I use is whenever I come into a meeting, I'll ask very simple questions. So if you prefer to be communication to be more on Zoom or phone call, move to the right side of your screen. If you prefer more email or text message, move to the left side. And if you have a gallery view on your Zoom meetings, then that will give you a really quick snapshot of preferred communication style. You can ask questions of if somebody prefers more morning meetings or more evening meetings. And asking questions like this will, again, give you quick snapshot of what the dynamics are within your team and give you a good idea of how you can cater the collaboration on these innovation methods within your team dynamics. So those are, just a few different things that you can use within your team and within your organization to identify those skills. So these are more preferences that we've spoken and a lot of insights. So these are what I perceive my strengths are. This is what my preferences are. But I'm going to give you one activity that you can use. Last activity to assess these team dynamics within your organization. And for that, I'm going to ask everyone to grab a piece of paper and a writing utensil. And in that piece of paper and on that writing utensil, I'm going to give you a challenge. See, I'm going to give you 60 seconds. I'm going to give you 75 seconds. And in that 75 seconds, I want you to draw as many circle item objects as you can. All right? Don't begin yet. Wait till I say go. But in 75 seconds, I want you to draw as many circle item objects, so objects that are a circle, as you can. Wait just a second for you to get your pen and paper. Ready, set, go. Circle item objects as you can. How many can you do? Circle item objects. You're about halfway. halfway in your circle item objects. You have about 15 seconds left. Five seconds. 2, 1, stop. Stop, stop, stop. Put the pencil down. Put the pencil down. All right. So, does anyone want to share in the chat some of the things that they drew? Some of the circle item objects? Generally, whenever I do this activity within teams, some people draw, most people go within themes. Yes, okay, so clock, ring, coin, metal, plate. Some people will draw apple, oranges, football, basketball, baseball, Mickey Mouse. I've seen quite a few BB-8s. So this was not a lot of time. This was an activity that took a little over a minute. Sometimes I give teams, closer to 2 minutes, but I keep it within a very short time frame. And there are some individuals within your team. Generally, whenever I do this in about a minute and a half, again, I'm more of a big picture person, and so I draw honestly between 23 and 27 generally whenever I do this activity. However, in the way that I will ideate a lot of ideas is I will come up with a lot of ideas with very few details. So while I will say that there are a lot of different things, it really just looks like a lot of circles. So there's not a lot of detail in the pictures. On the other hand, there are other people within the team that will do these same activities. And while I will come up with closer to 23, they might come up with closer to 4 or 5, but they'll have more detail and they will have more detail and more thought and actually be thought through a little bit differently. And again, this is a quick way that you can assess these team dynamics to see, okay, who's a little bit more on the strategic thinking, the detail orienting, who's a little bit more on the big picture side. And these two can complement each other quite a bit, especially when it comes to seeing that big picture on the implementation side, but then also knowing those details and knowing the next step and the strategy within the team. And so doing activities like this, not only are they kind of fun, but they give a really clear indication about how your brain will work, your brain can work and within your team dynamic to, again, assess how those team dynamics are and how you can better adjust. I'll give an example. I was working with one team where most of the team members were very strategic, very detail oriented, and they wanted more of a activity like this. Wasn't really their preference of giving an example for ideation so quickly. And so whenever we would come into meetings, I would actually send an email 24 hours before to give a heads up on what we were going to be ideating about, what those innovation methods we were going to be using, so there could be more preparation and more strategy on the front end, whereas I would more go into the meeting and then kind of jump in that way. So it kind of depended on who wanted more time on the front end for preparation to come in and who was going to come in and ideate more on the spot. And so again, having that assessment of those team dynamics is going to be so critical. Yeah, very good. Yeah, very good, Thomas. Yeah, so again, assessing those team dynamics, so critical. So we've talked about the first thing, which is the most important thing, which is identifying the problem and being very clear in what you are actually solving and what success is going to be within those innovation methods. I saw somebody said that it was very difficult to integrate that innovation within the workplace. What I encourage teams to do is start going through these activities on a micro level within your team. So just daily challenges that you're facing, weekly challenges, getting in the habit of practicing these routines and identifying the problem and being very clear in identifying what success is, and then moving into those collaboration methods, whether that be using TRIZ, root causal analysis, or value engineering. And then going into the think tank to truly, I know you've been waiting for me to say this, think outside of the box to come up with new ideas. But our innovation has not stopped here. Here we've come up with a lot of great ideas, but now it's time to filter through what ideas are going to be the most practical and are going to be the best fit in solving our challenges. And so from here, again, I first identify the value that each proposed solution is bringing. Does it match the problem that we identified at the beginning? Again, this might be a great idea, but it's not related to this problem specifically. So we might just put that idea more in a backlog and address it at a later time. So we want to be very clear in identifying what that scope is within our innovation, within that problem solving. So first doing, again, a little bit of value analysis and prioritizing where, what solutions are going to be the best fit. It's very important in this time to be very cognizant of the business aspect as well. Many times there's a bit of a disconnect between those that, especially on the engineering, on the developer side, of those that come up with the ideas, and then a lack of communication from the leadership team at the top. And so it's important that we have a very clear communication on both sides to keep in mind the business continuity and the and how we can propose these ideas to those that are not in engineering and in development. And so keeping that in mind, especially whenever we're coming up with these solutions. The biggest question that I ask, honestly, is it user-friendly? So asking that, especially looking at that UX. So that is critical, especially whenever looking at all of the solutions that you come up in the ideation phase and then identifying what is going to be the best fit moving forward. And then after that is really the last step, and that's implementing and then maintaining and assessing those the solutions that we have come up with and the innovation that we have sought to implement within our team and within our organization, whether that be, again, with the product, a service, or within a new system. And so within that implementation phase, again, we can come up with a lot of great ideas, but if we don't have the actual action of implementing it, then we haven't achieved our overall goal. And so this is really whenever I look into creating those timelines and creating a very specific game plan that is well communicated to my team and to the organization on what the idea is and how we are going to implement it. So this really comes down to more basic project management on the operational side of implementing those ideas. It will depend on the method of the type of challenge that you are solving on the method of implementation. Naturally, if you are fixing an existing problem, that's going to look a little bit different than launching a brand new product. So there isn't a specific type of implementation that's a catch-all. But again, I'm looking at what that problem is that we're solving, and then coming up with a clear project management. And the biggest thing is communicating what those timelines are and what can be expected within that implementation, within my immediate team and within the organization as well. And so again, that communication within the entire organization is going to be so critical in that time. See, we are in a very unique opportunity right now, because innovation in decades past have really come from opportunity, looking at technology and computers, and it really came from opportunity. But we are in a unique and exciting landscape right now where innovation is coming from necessity. And this is a rare and wonderful opportunity that we have to push our teams and push our organizations and push our product even further. And see the level at which a problem was created, we must rise above to solve that problem. And right now is our rare opportunity to rise up and to really unlock our most innovative selves so that we can change our teams, bring change to our organization, and really change our world. So again, my name is Amber Vanderburg. I wanted to leave the last couple minutes. Looks like it looks like we have just a little bit of extra time here. So I think with that, I am going to actually bring this all together and give you a way that we can bring this all together and put it into practice right now. See, whenever I was just last week, I was actually working with a team that was more on the front end development, and they were looking at building a new type of mascot for a very large veterinary clinic. And so they had a picture of a dog, and the feedback that they had gotten from the clients was that the clients really loved the dog, but the dog looked a little bit grumpy. And so what they wanted to do was create a happier looking dog that had floppy ears. And those were the two big things that they wanted, is they wanted a dog that had floppy ears. And that was it. The dog that they currently had did not have floppy ears, and it looked really grumpy. So one thing that I'm going to have you do is pull out another piece of paper. Again, this is going to be a 1 minute activity. And I want you to take a piece of paper and make it landscape. And I want you to draw one line down the middle and then draw 3 different lines across. So you should have 8 boxes. Some of you may have done an 8-box challenge before, but you've probably not done one in relation to a dog. All right, pull out your pen and paper. This time, I'm going to give you 15 seconds per box to draw a different type of dog. All right, so whenever I say next, you're going to go from one box to the next to draw a different type of dog that meets the requirements that it's a happy looking dog that has floppy ears. Okay? Don't worry, you're at your own home, so you don't have to be a great artist. But yeah, we're going to give you just a minute to get that ready. 3, 2, 1. We are drawing a mascot for a vet clinic. Is a happy looking dog. Next box. Don't have a lot of time. Don't have a lot of time. A happy looking dog. All right, next box. Just a few more seconds on this box. All right, next box. All right, you got the next box? You're halfway there. You're halfway there. Next box. Next box, you got 2 more boxes left to go. You're going to draw a happy looking dog with floppy ears for a vet clinic. Next box. And last one. Three, two, one, stop. Stop, stop, stop. Did you think that that was harder or easier than the circle drawing activity? Uh, harder, yeah, that one, it's supposed to be harder. That is very specific. Yeah, and especially, this is an activity that definitely use more towards front end, but depending on the prompt that you give, I use these questions. This was an example of drawing dogs. I'd love to see the pictures of your dogs if you want to put them in the Slack channel, because honestly, that is how I will share, especially in this remote time, with share ideas with our teams. So we'll go through an activity like this and we'll give prompts such as actual web design. We'll give ideas, again, on specifically solving a problem. We'll identify the problem, which is what we did in this case. We identified what we needed to do. We needed to improve an existing system. We did a value analysis. We did some value engineering. What people liked was the fact that it was a dog. We identified it was for a vet clinic. We identified that people really loved floppy ears. What they didn't like was that it didn't have a smile. It did look kind of like a grumpy dog. So we wanted something that looked a little bit better. So we wanted to improve on what we had. And so then we went into an 8-box challenge to quickly come up with a lot of ideas. Now each person has 8 different ideas, and then we can share these ideas. Again, if you're using Microsoft Teams, it could be it could be a Slack channel. You can share the ideas all on one platform and have all of the ideas in one space, even if you're not physically in the same space. And then you can begin having threads off of those posts and really building off of, oh, I liked this from this picture. Oh, I didn't like that from that picture. And then you can continue to build off. And from there, you can get a clearer idea of the direction in which you want to go. Again, this was kind of a more fun, silly example, but if you're giving very specific, especially on, and sometimes people, it's not even pictures. It could be more of a word. It could be more of a vague idea. Again, I only gave you about 15 seconds per photo. Sometimes I'll give teams closer to 30 seconds, but no more than a minute per box so that you can come up with a lot of ideas. Well, at least, yeah, exactly. At least you did it. Thank you so much. And again, you don't have to be a great artist. It's just a way to get those ideas out on paper very, very quickly. And again, this is on the ideation phase, and then we can go into choosing the right idea and going into that implementation phase. So these are a lot of different activities. Again, the circle drawing activity is good for doing analysis of team dynamics, but this one is very specific in identifying those, and then moving into the ideation phase. Imagine if I would have just said, hey, we need a picture of a dog. We probably would have gotten 8 pictures of a dog, but we might have gotten some with pointy ears. We might have gotten some that looked a little bit grumpy, right? So it was important that I first identified what we were looking for, what the purpose was, and what those constraints were. So we're finding that balance within flow, within those performance feedback loops, which we'll get in the Slack channels or whenever we post those photos. If I am in a physically close team, then we'll put them up on a wall, and then we can make comments, and we can do a little bit more real-time feedback that way as well. So again, it very much depends. There are some facilitators that will do this more on Post-it notes, and it will be more of writing out ideas. that is another option that you can use. Again, that's catered a little bit more towards being in a physical space. I really like this activity because you can do it while you are still remote. I know that some organizations and some teams are going to continue being remote in the future, and so there are ways that you can practically collaborate and come up with those ideas while you are still remote. And so again, all of these activities, of course, you can do them in person, but the thing that I really like about them specifically is that you can do them remotely as well and still come up with really great ideas. If we were in a Zoom chat or a way that had video conferencing some way, I actually did this yesterday where I had everyone put up their piece of paper and kind of explain why they drew, what the inspiration was, and they can come up with that. Again, this is something that is very good for coming up with very rapid ideation. Other activities you can use are more for the strategic, okay, now we're going to be a little bit more detailed and thinking through these ideas. So it's not just going to be off the cuff, it's going to be in more detail as well. So you're able to use both in that ideation phase. So with that, I'm going to open it up to any questions that anybody has for me. Thank you so much for participating in the different drawing exercises and in grabbing different items from around your house. I bet you didn't realize this was going to be as interactive as it was. But the thing that I love about this is you can replicate this and duplicate this throughout your teams today to help you be more innovative and to solve those problems. And I am going to put, that's my LinkedIn link. If anybody has any, wants to connect or has any questions on that as well. Yeah, also. I would love to know why I drew what I was drawing at here. Yeah, that's a great, yeah. So in this, are you talking about the dogs specifically? So that was an example where we were working with, okay, yeah. So that was an example where we're working with a veterinary clinic that they had more of a mascot of a dog on their website, and the dog that they had looked very grumpy and it didn't look very friendly. And so they wanted a different design. And so, so it was just really more of a prompt on what you, it was more of a prompt on how you can apply that within your team. So that was the prompt that I gave, and that's why you have the different dogs. Whenever I'm working within more of a development team, the prompts that I'll give are more specific towards, it could be more towards website design, it could be more towards code that you're building, it could be more towards, I've actually done this in identifying what the problem is. So I could say what, or it could be for goal setting. So what is the goal that we have at the end of this project that we're doing? What is success going to be defined as? And asking a prompt like that, and then giving 2 minutes to come up with 8 different answers. I actually did this with the team actually yesterday on what does success look like at the end of 6 months. And from that, we were able to see where the differences were and where the correlations were within the team. And we were able to build a clearly defined agenda within the organization. I did this a couple weeks ago with a team where we had a huge issue with, it was more within an HR team, and we had a huge issue with turnover. So we did an 8-box challenge where everyone identified different reasons on why there might be such a big turnover. And so from that, we were able to ideate a lot of different ideas. And then we also asked it again on solutions on how we could improve turnover. So we had a lot of different ideas, and then we could bring them all together and again, find those similarities and those differences. Yeah. Grumpier. Yeah. Yours is grumpier. Awesome. Well, yeah, as I said, I'm here with the Pathways group. And so we actually do this. I mean, a couple examples that I gave, I did this for education yesterday, I did this for an HR group, but really the group that I work most within is you guys. I work within technology the most. And so, yeah, so these are the types of prompts in assessing team dynamics to and identifying the problem and then implementing the solutions that we've come up with. This is pretty much what we do within organizations and within teams every day. So if you have any questions, I'd love, yeah, my LinkedIn is right up there. I'm also on Twitter, YouTube, all the social media. If you want to connect as well. My Twitter handle is my last name and my first name, Vanderburg Amber. So yeah, I'd love to connect. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And yeah, I think that's everything that I have, unless I'm going to hang out here for just a few more minutes in case anyone has any other questions. Thank you so much, Johnson. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, if anyone wants any other activities that you can use for ideation and implementation, in addition to strategies for actually how to implement and identify those problems, yeah, again, just feel free to reach out. Again, it totally depends on what problem you're solving and the team dynamics within the organization. What would be the best way to teach innovation? Are you talking about within your team specifically? I'm going to assume it's within your team. So innovation is a muscle, or in the company culture. Okay. Yeah. So innovation is a muscle that needs to be flexed. And so it's really more of practicing it. So you'll notice today, I went in through a little bit of theory, but then we also practiced it quite a bit as well. So I am all gung-ho for really stepping in and really beginning. Again, this was a low stakes. I mean, drawing circles, drawing dogs, there wasn't a huge risk in trying to flex that innovation muscle on a small scale. And then I'll move up from there within the company culture, within teams. Within the company culture, I will work with teams more specifically. And again, looking at it on a daily or a weekly or a monthly level of, okay, what are some problems? What are some things that we might be what are some problems that we can solve, and what are some more innovative ways that we can move forward in solving those issues? And so I really look at it from a very practical level, very organization specific on what are some challenges that we can solve today in an innovative method. And so I look at the kind of like the activities that we did today, have books worth of activities that I'll use depending on those team dynamics. So rather than just sitting in a room and coming up with the same ideas, we'll really challenge the brain to think more innovatively and to come up with more ideas. So generally, you'll notice in the 8-box challenge, the first two dogs that you drew might be the first ones that generally come into your head whenever you think about a dog. But dog number 7 and 8 might have been a little bit different than what you had drawn before. Same with the circle challenge. The first ones that you drew might have been very simple, but as you move on, you're forced to get a little bit more innovative the more time that you go on. So definitely begin by challenging people, challenging teams from the get-go, because it is a muscle that we have to flex. And many times I find that teams and organizations that are not as innovative, or they have real struggles with innovation, it's because those muscles aren't being flexed. And so there's a status quo that is accepted, or there is a level of there's a level of complacency rather than challenging that status quo. And so we go into, again, assessing those team dynamics first, identifying what the problems are, and then assessing the team dynamics, and then going into those challenges. How to deal with resistance and innovation. So generally, resistance to innovation also comes to with a resistance to change, because innovation is generally a different way of looking at things and a different way of change. And so there's a couple of people that I love to follow. Dr. John Kotter is one of my favorite people to follow on change management. And so what he does is he actually looks at bringing awareness that there is a problem. So he has a great book called The Iceberg is Melting. And so I generally look at change management in addition to innovation being a part of that. Because again, you can have a lot of really great ideas, but if you don't have a team that's on board or an organization that's on board to implementing that change and to implementing that innovation, then there's going to be quite a bit of pushback. So I look at change management first and then add in innovation as a piece to that. So there are some organizations that before we can even get to coming up with new ideas, we have to create an environment and a culture where we're open to those new changes. So again, John Kotter, that's Kotter. He writes of, again, bringing that awareness to change and then bringing that momentum through those small wins. So same idea with innovation, we're bringing it through those small wins, building up to more larger scale innovative methods within the organization and within the team. That's a really great question, and it's a very common challenge that teams face. Yeah, these are really great questions, guys and girls. Implementing that change is going to be a really big, that's going to be the biggest measure of success. Is you can come up with a lot of great ideas, but actually doing that implementation is really where the success lies. So those were some really great questions. I think that I might be out of time here. But thank you so much, Noah. I think I might be out of time here, but again, find me on any social media. I'd love to connect. And if you have any questions more about innovation within teams and how to help your team reach be more innovative in their problem solving, love to reach out. Thank you so much.